We will be landing on the moon in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Cup Duet Reviews. My name is Jillian Robinson. I am the Associate Artistic Producer here at Cup of Hemlock Theatre. Today I'm joined by the wonderful Ryan Borochovitz, one of our co-artistic producers. Ryan, how are you doing?
Well, the eagle has landed and I'm doing great.
I'm going to bring us in with a silly themed intro there today.
Love it. Why is that the silly theme? What are we talking about today?
We are talking about Young People's Theatre's production of The Darkest Dark by Jim Millan and Ian MacIntyre, adapted from the book by Chris Hadfield and Kate Fillon, directed by Jim Millan. And this is a remount. Young People's Theatre has done this production in the past. They are bringing it back to the Ada Slate stage. February 10th to March 16th, 2025 is the run for this iteration. And wow, is it out of this world and far out, dude.
Far out of this world.
Yeah. So we're going to have so much fun chit-chatting about this, I know for sure. But before we sort of blast off into outer space, let's do our traditional icebreaker here at the Cup. Ryan, what are you sipping on for this episode?
I am sipping on orange pekoe tea, which I have in the cup. That's what I got for you.
I feel like you started that in a little bit of a robot voice, and I was here for it. You're like, I am drinking orange
motor oil for all of my gears. I am a robot, just like Chris's friends scold him for being.
That's much better. And wearing with the gray shirt, like the metallic robot vibes, I'm here for it. Yeah, that's just the outfit I chose, but it's giving constellations. We're in a very
like the surface of the moon, both of us.
Yeah. I am drinking, I guess, human motor oil, Gatorade. One of my 2025 missions has been to go to spin classes. So I do find my hydration station needs a little extra electrolytes in the tank. So I'm drinking grape Gatorade for this episode. Okay, so we've given so many dad puns about this show. So Ryan, let's do the standard synopsis for The Darkest Dark, please.
Okay. The year is 1969 because the Apollo 11 mission is about to land on the moon. And you know who's most excited about that? Young Chris Hadfield, who will himself grow up to be an astronaut and internet celebrity. And fun fact, he also went to my middle school, Montclair Secondary School in Oakville, Ontario. His picture was on the wall. Woo woo. Just had to slip that in there somewhere. So this Darkest Dark is based on a children's book co-authored by Chris Hadfield himself about his childhood, spending the summer of 1969 up in cottage country, Stag Island, it's referred to as, with his family and some of his cottagey friends who they have the best time getting very excited about the moon landing because, oh boy, does young Chris love outer space, foreshadowing for future career path, perhaps. But, everybody was very swept up in moon fever in that particular summer, and he's getting prepared to, watch the moon landing. His two best friends, Herbie and Jane, are preparing a fun little theatrical event, a little makeshift play that they're going to perform for their family, basically, at the cottage in anticipation for the moon landing. It's going to be moon themed, I bet you can bet. And they're also taking these fun canoe lessons from a totally groovy hippie dude named Keith, who's teaching them how to be safe in a canoe. And his sister Cindy happens to have a crush on Keith, because who doesn't? But that's all set up. But what really kicks the plot into motion is that Chris, despite loving the great dark elsewhere up in the cosmos, has a pretty dark secret of his own, that he is afraid of the dark, and he is unable to go to sleep. This is kind of framed in the show as he can sleep fine in the city at home because there's all these lights, but up in cottage country, it's just too dark, and it's really startling him, and he needs one of his parents around, and he's giving his poor parents a very hard time when they're just trying to have a nice relaxing vacation and their kid is being nothing but trouble, but he can't help it. He's afraid. But how will he ever be an astronaut if he can't get over his fear of the dark? And in the interest of non-spoiler, I think I will end the plot summary there, but this is a lovely little tale about children overcoming fears, learning valuable lessons, friendship, camaraderie, peace and love,
Yeah.
man, you know, the swinging 60s and everything. Yeah, I thought it was great. How about you? Anything you
Yeah.
want to add or go straight to general appraisals?
Oh yeah, that's a perfect synopsis. General appraisal, so fantastic. Such a fun night. And the show itself is only about an hour long too. It was like, oh my gosh, it's over. It's one of the shows like, I don't want it to be over. What happens next?
Moves at a very brisk clip,
Yeah, just absolutely every single box checked as being brilliant, from the aesthetics to, the acting is incredible. This cast is super cohesive. Knowing, just talking with Shaquille Pottinger, who is a friend of mine who plays Keith, I just kind of picked the ear of, is it the same cast from the remake? Because I didn't get a chance to see it prior to. And there were some changes, some that were carried over from the last one, but it felt like it didn't matter. This was a super cohesive, stunning cast. The color palette for costuming and set was so 60s and so much fun. And just every single time a character donned a new costume, it was magic. And then speaking of magic, there is elements of magic tricks in this that just take you to the next level, take you beyond the ozone.
There is a magic consultant credited in the program here. So David Ben was the magic consultant. Great job. The tricks they were like all kind of simple tricks that, like, after you think about them for a second, you can figure out how they were done, but they still like get you for that moment of, whoa.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
How did he was there a second ago? How did he get over there?
Especially for like a young audiences, like kids were blown away.
But even as an adult, it's like, you have that moment before so I'm just like, oh wow, didn't expect
some of them
that.
I don't know how they did, and I'm like, I don't want to find out. That's magic, theater magic at its finest, no pun intended. They also had a lovely sort of like psych strips, projection strips that looked very kind of like planet rings or like telescope vibes. It was giving very like spacey black hole. And then throughout the piece, whether it was news clippings, whether it was just like foliage to act as like background set dressing, it was just a really good use of that sort of digitized media to augment a piece of history where that was mind-blowing. I think it's Herbie says like, oh, TV's going to be so boring after this when they're all watching the moon landing. So yeah, I just thought dramaturgically that was a really cool little slivers to add to what we were watching on stage. The character work in this was stunning and so authentic and just fun. Like you could tell the actors were just having so much fun, and that energy just sort of trickling throughout the auditorium. We were very honored here at the Cup to see so many of Young People's Theatre's productions, and everyone is so rich and lovely. But this one, I think, is gonna sit with me for a really long time. It just was like one of those pieces where I was just having so much fun, and the script is astonishing and so funny and relatable, and just, again, speaking from an actor lens, having the actors really like lift the text and put it in their body. And you can tell like they were having playground moments, which I've mentioned on these episodes before, which is super fun to see. So stunning. One of the best pieces of theater I've seen in 2025 as of yet, I would say.
As of yet. February 13th. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
No.
How about you? Any other general appraisals?
I think general appraisal. Yeah, you're hitting the nail on the head. I think it's great. The characters are so endearing. It can be sometimes a little iffy when adult humans play children, and but like that's something that is this a little too cloying or weird. But I think especially our main cast of children characters, all played by adult actors, they just nailed it. They got the mannerisms down. It never felt condescending, but it was like authentic is a word you used, and I think that really suits it well. Yeah, it's just such a charming story. We can unpack more details about some of the specifics and the scenography that you started unpacking here, but I think it's simultaneously like a fun time capsule love letter to this moment in the 1960s about what the history of space travel meant to someone like Hadfield, who has defined so much of his life by it. And like, regardless of, I know he wrote the children's book that this is based on, whether or not there's embellishments in how much of like a space kid he was in it, I don't know. But like, I think it paints a very human portrait of him as somebody who just like is so into this stuff, but also recognizes that there's flaws and character traits that he needs to overcome, and those aren't weaknesses that he should feel shame for, but that they're just part of growing up. There's nothing like heavy-handed about this show that I feel like something with such a clear moral could be. And like as adults watching it, you could probably see the moral coming a mile away, but I feel like a lot of kids are like, oh wow, I didn't realize that astronauts can be afraid of the dark. And like,
but even, I mean, I guess I can contribute to this as we go into spoiler, because I feel like it would, what I'm about to say would be kind of giving away a heartbeat moment for me. So maybe I'll keep it beyond the spoiler.
Sure.
Shall we just cast the spoiler shield?
We might as well.
So here comes some stars across your scene, because one of the magic tricks was Chris, played by Ziska Lewis, takes sort of like a light orb in one of the sort of dream night sequences that happen recurrently throughout. And it's like he grabs light and then like sets it off into the ether, and then stars appear on those little like strips of projector material that I was talking about earlier. So that's what our spoiler shield is. It's a couple of spoiler stars. Okay, so going back just really quickly on that, the fact that yes, the main theme, and you're right, it's not even a heavy-handed sort of build-up thing. It's just quite as simplistic as, you know, your fears are sometimes quite similar to your dreams or to what you want to conquer. And that's what makes them such a challenge. That hit me hard because it's something that we kind of learn throughout our lives, but you don't actually sit with it and realize. And I don't know, just personally, that's huge right now. And also sitting in that concept, I'm getting so deep now, but what we really want is usually what we're most afraid of, or vice versa, or could be, right? So like, yeah, in Chris's case, like there's that moment where he says, you know, oh my gosh, like I'm scared of the dark, but I'm obsessed with outer space. And like, they are the same thing. Like outer space is darkness. And then also just, you know, through Jane and her realizing I want to be a part of theater so bad, but acting makes me too anxious and too nervous. So she pivots and does like the props and backstage stuff and
which
less
she loved all
roles,
along.
which she's loved all along. And then same with Herbie, like really wanting to get the canoe badge. So he had to conquer his fears and get in the water. And so,
or else he's going to jail.
But the fact that like those kind of just like those character conquer moments pepper in near the end, but then it's when they put on the play for the family, which is just like a tiny little nugget at the end. Chris has this like very timely micro monologue of, you know, them all being together and being like, yeah, the world, you know, needs us to conquer our fears, or like if we're all together. I don't know. It was just very much, I don't even remember the specificity of it because I was crying while I was watching. But it was just like, yeah, when you bond together and you know, you realize your fears don't define you, and you realize that you're never alone. You have your imagination. And he actually says to his mom, like, I didn't make that up. My imagination did. And I think the sort of separation of that is super lovely. And it's so poignant obviously for adults to remember that we have the capacity to separate the two. And I think it's so important. But also for kids, like kids live in a land of imagination, because that's how you formulate who you want to be. Make believe and exercising your imagination as a child is kind of like your formula of programming your human. So it was just kind of lovely to have our protagonist kind of say that kind of nonchalantly to his mom of, you know, that wasn't me that said that, that was my imagination. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so sweet.
If I could build off of that, and I feel like they don't even really like emphasize this or dwell on this in the show itself, but the imagination is the source of all of the characters' fears. That like Chris, it's not just he's afraid of the dark, he's afraid that in the dark there is this shadow alien monster. Like that is his imagination creating that. That's not something that exists in the space. And just trying to think like with Herbie, for example, it's perhaps a little like less direct, but he's afraid that, oh no, I can't swim and I lied about it, so now I'm going to jail. Or like, like, you know, they're inflating the fears through their imagination. So similar to how space is dark and darkness is what I'm afraid of, the thing I fear is the thing I love, that embracing the imagination in that same way is a similar kind of parallelism that I think that the play is kind of covertly slipping into that same moral, even without putting so fine a point on it. I feel like Jane's thing is maybe less directly about the imagination. She creates imaginative worlds through her plays, but I feel like it's
also I think it goes to, like you saying, and this is where it hits, I think, with the adult humans in the audience, of this idea of like inflation and this idea of overthinking. That's our imagination. Like, that's where it can become a detriment, right? Is like you're putting false narratives to something that hasn't even happened yet. And I think just through Jane also, we're seeing a little bit, maybe tidbits of like anxiety, right? Of just like getting overwhelmed before even trying something out, right?
Okay, here it is. Jane, by wanting to make the play but not wanting to be in the play, she likes creating the imaginative space without living in it. There it is. Got
there. And that's, anyways, I love how this is where we're starting, where we're like, all of the children characters are like giving us messages for the world at large, like, which is true. It's so true. Like the texture in this script is amazing. Again, I think it's one of the best written scripts I've seen on stage in a while. First of all, it's like an actor's meal. Like, I definitely, watching this, I was like, this would be so lovely to sink your teeth in as an actor, because it's so juicy and it's like relatable, it's conversational, it's funny. It's just like a good, it's like a good time.
Got it all.
It really does. And so, I just wanted to kind of segue us to sort of mentioning the script again.
Would you like to perhaps move on to cast shoutouts? There's a lot of great ones in this.
Yeah, totally a lot of great ones. I do have to do my shout out to Shaquille Pottinger, because we love Shaquille.
Yeah, and he's so funny in this.
Is amazing. Like, just like hippie, like grounded dude, sounds like this. Not a part of like the nuclear Hadfield family, not a part of the friend group. He's the canoe instructor that just kind of finds the way in and like creates the love and peace and like zones down the moments when needed. We've seen Shaquille in other things. Like I've seen Shaquille play Lady Bracknell. I've seen Shaquille play, in It's a Wonderful Life. So it's just really lovely again to see Shaquille's actor palette just flourish in this. There's so many, again, every single cast member is stunning. Yeah. I would love to shout out Hannah Forrest Brion, who played Jane. Again, folks, sorry if we are mispronouncing anybody's names. Just the gesture and character work and quirks that Hannah brought to Jane was phenomenal. So good. And like going back to what you said too, it's the epitome of, you said like adult actors playing kids, but like they did it, they hit the mark.
Yeah.
Totally. Like I knew like the different colored barrettes that this girl would wear or something, right? Like there was just such like a perfect blueprint that she brought to Jane. So quirky and very like unexpected. And like at one point, like she jumps on Chris's back in a piggyback. She like flails funny. Like she's super quirky in some moments, but then she's super like timid in other moments. I was just like, it's giving girl about to embrace puberty, but like not quite know, where she's at yet. Like
And note
really
of
well
the
done.
friend group, she was the only one who like instantly figured out that Cindy has a crush on Keith. Like, whereas the two boys are just like, I don't understand. We all like Keith. And she's like, no, I get it. So yes, I think that's
she definitely represents like the little girls at that age. You know what I mean? Like she gets it, but she doesn't quite know like where she is. So she's just like, wow. Jane kind of reminds me of me when I was a kid. So I'm like, wow, yeah, we love that.
Except then without the stage fright.
Yes, fair. There's not a single thing of that in my body, that's for sure. But I have dabbled in the other realms of theater and production side of thing, and I also really love doing that too, i.e. this podcast producing. I will also shout out Lisa Ryder, who plays the mom. Again, harkening back to mentioning how the script has so many little like comedic nuggets. I think she hit every one of those that were in part of her dialogue and really like made a meal and just absolutely represented just like the exhausted young mom who's just like, I just want it. The delivery was was amazing on her end. Her costumes were so fun too. Like all of the costumes in this were so fun.
Costumes and sets designed by Anna Trusch.
Yes, so, Anna, brilliant job there. Do you want to? Because we'll probably do shout outs for all of them this time. So I'll just pass the torch, and you can.
So similar to what you were saying about Jane and what I alluded to earlier about the adults playing kids. That I think just Ziska Lewis as Chris is perfect. He anchors the whole show. He's just like bold and charismatic enough that you're like instantly endeared to him, but then like he recoils into the timidness and his fears and he sends us on this journey. And I think, he just does an excellent job. Yeah.
I also find, but like his visage like does remind me of Chris Hadfield too. Like he has like similar features. Yeah.
No, I think he's very well cast for like just across the board, all these reasons. In the same spirit, while we're kind of discussing the children, Anthony Perpuse as Herbie. Yeah, he's just so funny. He's so quirky. I love when he becomes the what did he call it? The alien Moon Man.
Moon Man. Yeah,
tap dancing Moon Man. Yeah, which just like he had like a bit that he like committed to, like this is the character, but like the way that the actor kind of did it, and he sends us on his own whole journey with his fear of swimming. There was one moment. The best thing about seeing shows at YPT is, especially with kids in the audience, is that the kids get really into things. And my favorite, there was quite a few in the night we saw this on opening, the instances of kids getting into it. But my favorite one was about Herbie specifically, is after he overcomes his fears and he dives into the water and does his cannonball off stage. I think it was Keith who runs back out and says, or perhaps Jane, like, hey, check it out, Herbie did a big cannonball. And one kid was like, I want to see it.
Yeah. Because it was like off stage, but the kid,
they were just told that like something cool happened off stage. Herbie overcame his fear and completed his character arc. And like, oh, I want to see that. Obviously that's just like a fun, like sort of sidetrack, kids being cute, watching theater for the first time. But I think also Herbie's character arc was well sold, that the kids were invested in. I want to see the cool thing he did.
Oh my god, the moment, again, the three of them, like Chris, Jane, and Herbie, like they have these little like pop out like trio, out, no pun intended, out of this world like quirky moments. And the one of them when he's just like, Herbie gets on his hands and he's like, hold my legs, and then they just like hold him upside down. It's so fun. Like I would love to have been a fly on the wall during rehearsal of just like go. Like, just do something and they'll follow the lead and be like, yep, that's what we're doing. We'll keep it.
Yeah, him doing like the quicksand in the box was another one. That Jane, that you mentioned earlier, the moment where she just like climbs on Chris's back and that's like a thing. But what I even like more than that is she does like a almost cartwheel, but like the way that kids who can't do cartwheels do it, where they just sort of like flip her over.
Jane.
Like again, the way that these adult humans play these child humans is just, I love it. It's so good. It's what just makes this so endearing. Who else do we still have?
Ron Pedersen, apologies Ron for mispronouncing your last name, plays dad, but also doubles as the news anchor. Again, YPT's like double tracked, because I remember chatting about this for Charlie and the Chocolate Factory too. They're so rich and so great and so fun, because it's like you're getting to do like the opposite sides of the spectrum. So just like as the dad, kind of similar to what I said about the mom, just trying to have vacation, trying to be, a very open, like loving dad for that time frame, trying to talk his son through his fears, trying to like keep things together, be the dad, have his fish tackle box, organize it out. Very relatable, reminds me of my dad. But then to have that in contrast to we had this news anchor character who sort of just really acted as like an enlivened transition marker to also kind of keep us grounded in this build up historical moment of when we landed on the moon, right? It's kind of like neat that is sewn in to this little like family comedy, again, from like a gesturing and the choice there of having him like the standard, like cartoonish, very straight across, like shoulder padded, stiff neck, like this is my job, I am the anchor, these are the things happening, and then like sports. And then like,
well, then like, there's a teddy bear, and oh no, I hope they make it on their space trip. Like it like reminds me of like Creed from The Office. Like there's just like he just like chimes in with these one-liners and then disappears, and like he's just
so fun. And then on that note, too, shout out to all of the quick change folks that help with that, because Ron has quite a few like really quick from swiveling back and forth between dad and Anchor.
I swear I actually wasn't certain that it was him playing both characters, not because it didn't look like him. I was like pretty sure it was him, but how quick some of those quick changes were, I'm like, I don't know, maybe they have, is it twins? Like, am I being prestiged here? Like what?
Right.
How are they doing this so impressively?
And then Evelyn Weeb, again, apologies if I'm mispronouncing your name, plays Cindy, who is Chris's sister.
My favorite character, I must say.
Again, the blueprint, the like absolute rich texture that Evelyn brought to Cindy was phenomenal. And like instantly there's this slow motion crush sequence where Cindy crushes on Keith, so that there's that whole sort of side storyline happening. And Cindy and Chris have, the classic sibling spats throughout. They both kind of want to tell each other's secrets to each other's friends. Anyway, she just added like she kind of also and maybe it's just like big sister energy, but like Phineas and Ferb, like, I can't remember her name, the sister in that, but
after my time, I felt like I was too old for this show by the time everyone was talking
about it. I kind of was too, but anyways, it's just kind of like, the standard older sister who's like always around and like kind of like meddles, just seeing kind of like the younger kids and then like the teenager vibes between like Cindy and Keith, and then we have like the parents. Like there really is something for every generation in this piece too.
So I want to say, while we're still on Cindy, Okay, so I loved Evelyn's performance. Everything you're saying was fantastic. I think this is a dramaturgy note I have, because this character is just so endearing, and I wish we had some sort of closure for her plot line. Because, not that I'm saying she has to end up with Keith or they have to sort of have some sort of romantic connection, but it is sort of introduced in a too loud aside that isn't actually an aside. That her feelings for Keith are disclosed, and Keith is like, hey, everybody has feelings, so you can tell like he's kind of gonna let her down gently there, but then no.
I don't think he lets her down, because when they go to watch the play, the mom hugs Keith, and to me that was a subtle indicator that like he is partnered up with Cindy.
Okay, like maybe I feel like in a kids show you can make that more explicit, like have an actual, like, again, these are just such dynamic, compelling characters that like I'm invested in their almost maybe relationship, and and like I think they're fun, and like part of me, by not having an explicit any kind of closure, it doesn't have to be a specific type of closure, it would have been totally fine if she and Keith just like have a conversation about like, it's cool or whatever. But like the fact that felt like a hanging thread in the story made me think that this character is written into this almost to just be an obstacle for Chris, more so than someone who gets to be a fully living, breathing person. Evelyn in her performance totally made her a fully living person, but that made that lack of finality all the more potent to me. I don't know. That was just, and like she plays a space vampire. She's amazing. Like what a performance.
So talking on that, which we haven't really chatted about. So throughout the piece, as Chris is working through his fears, because we obviously get to see the sort of main storyline of like the friends are learning their canoe lessons. They're prepping the play to show on the night that the moon landing happens. But then kind of like the sister plot to go with this is Chris dealing with his fears, which comes in the scenes where he is going to bed every night and he can't go. He doesn't want to be alone. He can't go to sleep. He's afraid of the dark. So a lot of that is the mom and dad coming in. They switch throughout of who's going to stay with him this time and whatever. But then every time he does go to sleep, he has these dream sequences, and they do happen a fair bit of times. And I just love that shift that we get from like the real time, real life Chris to the dreamy sequence Chris. All elements of theater with a capital T are peppered into these moments. And I just think, again, dramaturgically speaking too, like, our imagination is its most raucous during our dreams. And I just think it's another lovely layer for this piece and for young audiences and kids to keep them entertained and keep them with it, is you have like the real timeness and the kids creating a play and utilizing their imaginations in reality. But then you also, because we're in theater and we can do this in the snap of a finger, you have this whole like surrealness of imagination. And what is it like? This is clearly not real, but it's okay to sort of work through it. I don't know. It just, so through these sequences too, like, again, to get more specific, like the costuming. So like you just mentioned, when Cindy plays like Count Singula, I think was the name.
Yeah, I forget this was
or something, but like the space vampire. And then like Jane came out as a little rope.
They even had us boo her. Like,
boo her, yeah. And then Jane came out in like this wonderful like robot costume. And then Herbie came out in like his green like alienness from like the costuming lens. And then just the whole lighting grid during those moments, like having like the green lights underneath the bed. We already talked about this, but like Ziska doing, the spooky green eyes too.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. And then like Ziska doing like the light magic tricks. I just think like the theatrical moments that lifted the darkest dark scene, like the darkest scenes in this was magical. It really was. Like, to me, it was like, those were the moments of being a kid, like getting your make-believe dress-up box and like putting on the costumes and like working through stuff and making stories. Like, we saw that through these dream sequences. Yeah. So wow, that's I'm gonna land on that of like the theater, the most potent, the most potent theater magic moments for me happened in the darkest scenes.
And so I'll just kind of add to just shout out to the people who made all this happen. We already mentioned Anna True, she was set and costume designer. Bonnie Beecher is the lighting designer. Composer and sound designer, Deanna H. Choi, and projection designer, Daniele Guevara. So yeah, together they just, really made theater magic, for lack of a better word.
And can I say, and I've never mentioned this yet for our YPT discussions, the sound balance at YPT is one of the best in the city.
Yeah, for sure.
It is so good.
Crisp.
The balance between the labs and whatever sonically is happening, like whether it is a sound effect, whether it is music, the balance is always so crispy there in that space. So shout out to that tech team, because, and then especially in this one, when Chris does, have sort of, I want to call it like moody voice moments where it's like echoey or a little bit like, again, in the dream. I don't know why I'm describing it that way, but here we are.
Because there's a lot of moon imagery in this show.
Because it's so clear and the switch is so nice and it just pairs really well with everything going on. Yeah, like shout out to that whole team.
Yeah.
Because I've noticed it in the other pieces too. I've never actually mentioned it, but I do think like the balance between like sound and labs on the ATIS Slate stage is some of the best in Toronto.
And like to go back to It's a Wonderful Life, which you mentioned earlier, because Shaquille was also in that one. Like that show was all about sound. It was the radio play with the Foley and like, and then if you even think of something like the unwritten improv show where there's no like specific cues or very specific cues. Like I'm trying to remember exactly like what the sound design of that show would have been like, but because it was all improv and you have to kind of anticipate in a space like this where there's going to be a lot of children in the audience that the sound has to be great, because there's going to be a whole separate soundscape coming from the auditorium that you have to compete with. So
I think it's a perfect marriage of the stage itself. Like I haven't had the opportunity of standing on the ATIS Slate stage.
Yes.
Maybe hopefully down the line it would be lovely. I feel like it's a beautiful marriage of like the stage space is great. The auditorium itself with like the bricked walls and the sort of spaciousness of it is great. And then that soundboard is great. So it's all three of those elements that are just really, really augmenting every moment.
While we're still talking about production elements and the technical kind of crafted display here, can we just talk about the swinging 60s of it all? And especially scene transitions?
Yes, please.
So every time they were doing a scene transition, first of all, to go back to Anna's set design, we have these two panels that kind of make up in a corner on one side. They're painted to be the inside of Chris's bedroom. And then in the exterior scenes, they open up and become this kind of outdoor two separate cottages that all of the outdoor action kind of happens in between. Very elegant, efficient use of these spaces and flats and items every time, because it sort of really went back and forth between the inside and the outside scenes. And so there was a lot of scene transitioning, even if it's a simple mechanism to open it up. They really milked the scene transitions as a way of, as you mentioned earlier, projecting archival video of the Apollo 11 mission and various news clippings of things at the time. We have our news anchor character every so often showing up, but then there's also just these musical interludes of people dancing like it's the 60s, doing the hula hoop like it's the 60s. Yep. Shout out to the cast
wagon.
Yeah. I think Lisa Ryder in particular did the hula hoop for longer than anyone and got like an applause from the audience for just how well she did it with it. Yeah.
And to add to that too, again, all of these elements working together, when there was these sort of hop in dance moment tradition-y, there was like very colorful 60s-esque gobos. So the light almost was there too. Yeah. We love when the transitions can oomph the piece even more.
It reminds me of, this is probably not a kid-friendly reference, so apologies if any kids are watching this about a show that's clearly for them, but it's like Austin Powers. It's like over-the-top 60s scene transition.
Yes, I was actually just going to say Austin Powers,
because like, you could picture those scenes. I don't remember if all three movies do it, but certainly in the first one where they just kind of cut to him like dancing in this like white space with like these women behind him.
Or like the psychedelic things.
And then like just closing up on his teeth or something. Like, but it's like, it's that kind of like, this is how you know it's the 60s. People dance like it's the 60s in between scenes, and it's not adding anything to the plot, but 60s. Very groovy, very shagadelic. Maybe not shagadelic, but you get what I'm saying.
Psychedelic, yeah.
It's a kids show.
On that note too, like going back to, and I feel like YPT hits this on the mark every time, it is projected obviously for young people. That's the name of their company, but
that's why they call it
that. And maybe it's just because I feel like I do still have a large inner child chunk of me, and I've done a lot of TYA in my career as well, and I'm bubbly, optimistic person. So maybe what I'm about to say, like I relate to it more prevalently, but young people's theater always like just gets everybody gives something to everybody in the audience. Whether it's your first time seeing theater, or this maybe is a bit morbid, but like maybe your last time seeing theater, like with every show we see, like there's something for everyone to take away. And it doesn't have to be like, oh, everyone got it, or like, this message is for everyone. No, I feel like it's just the pieces that I think the team chooses, but it's also, the teams that they bring in to do these pieces, that there's definitely like a similar heartbeat. We saw it in Fixing Girl. I saw it in Charlie and Chocolate Factory. We saw it even in the touring dance heavy show.
Bouche de la. Through My Eyes, Bouche de la was the company.
It's just, I feel like the mandate of YPT, like there's a heartbeat for everyone in all of their pieces. And I think it's lovely. It's something like this, like The Darkest Dark. This is again a remount of something they've already done. But even again, chatting with Shaquille right after the show, briefly asking about firsthand, was Keith different for you? I didn't get a chance to see the first one, right? But like, what did you add? And even Shaquille saying like, I didn't want to change it too much, basically, but he's like, with other folks that are in the cast, obviously there's going to be new changes and energies and vibes. And I just think it's so rich on that stage, like with every piece we've seen, that there's just like an energy that comes off of the stage into the audience for everyone. I feel like I'm mumbling now, but
I feel like this is a very good note to end on, unless you have something else you want to talk about that we haven't gotten to yet.
No, I think I've taken us really into the stratosphere on that last comment.
Far out, man.
Far out, man. Definitely make your way to Young People's Theatre, the Ada Slate stage to catch The Darkest Dark. It is running until March 16th, 2025. We'll pop all of the ticket information down below, like usual. On that note, pivoting back to the Cup, Ryan, where can folks find and follow you?
No need to find and follow me personally, but if you like me and my theater thoughts, many of them tend to live here on The Cup. That's the show you're watching and or listening to right now. We're Cup of Hemlock Theatre on YouTube, the Cup of Hemlock Theatre podcast in all the podcast places, at COH Theatre on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Like, share, subscribe, follow, do all the things. Also, lately, many of my theater thoughts are also living on Next Magazine, where I have been frequently publishing reviews of other plays. So if you ever wonder, hey, what does Ryan think of such and such show, but the Cup didn't do an episode on it, I'm confused, how do I find out his thoughts? Go over there, you might find out what I had to think about other shows. Nice. Find out how much I love Kim's Convenience. Go see Kim's Convenience.
Nice. Amazing.
How about you, Jill?
Where
can people find and follow you?
Yeah, people can find and follow me at my artist Instagram account, Jillian.Robinson96. I post some covers of songs. I post updated info of projects that I have down the line. Just to kind of briefly catch folks up, the audition season has been super lovely. We're kind of in the thick of it right now, and I'm very, very grateful for all of that. Time of release of this episode, I just finished director mentoring rather, for Heart House Theatre again. Last year I did it for Legally Blonde, which I think I mentioned on the Cup. This year I did it for Shawshank Redemption. So different than Legally Blonde, but a super lovely experience there.
And that'll be over by the time this episode comes out, correct?
So that will be over. Yeah. But just kind of sharing what I've artistically kind of had my hands in.
If there was a link that people could follow, we'd want to include it, but alas, poor York.
Exactly. Alas. So yeah, folks want to kind of keep up with that, go for it. Follow me on the Insta. On that note, I think it is time to go to bed and not be scared of the dark. And if we are scared of the dark, that is okay. We will count our asteroids, was it?
Yeah, it was asteroids.
Nice. Yeah. So everyone, thank you so much for joining us here for another Duet review at the Cup. There's many, many more down the line. We also have some interviews coming up down the line, and there's many different tendrils of the Cup. So keep your eyes peeled as the year goes on. In the meantime, stay safe, stay warm. There's lots of snow on the ground, so please don't slip. And that's all my mom notes for now. I'm going to grab my empty Gatorade bottle and say cheers, and we'll see you next time on the Cup. Bye, folks.